I have also been watching Grace and Frankie for the first time, which I know I'm really behind on that one. I am like somewhere near the middle of season 2, not quite in the middle, but somewhere near the middle of season 2. And I have to say, I am really, really enjoying it, and I'm very invested. I'm gonna get my least favorite part out of the way first. The kids, I don't really like any of them that much. I don't connect with any of them that much. And the one, Brianna, I really don't like her. Um, her favorite song off of Taylor Swift's new album is canceled, if you catch my drift. Like, that is definitely the vibe I'm getting from her, and I don't like her. But Grace and Frankie themselves, I really like. They are a very funny comedic duo together. And I mean, of course, it's Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. Is that how you say her last name? I think so. Of course, they're a great comedic duo. They are very funny together, but also I was going into this show expecting it to be a comedy, and it is funny, but it's definitely more of a drama, maybe a dramedy. There are, like, along with the concept being what it is, there are some real, genuine moments in this show where they deal with very serious human things. Like that episode where Grace almost fell, and she had this whole vision of breaking her hip and being a patient in the medical system, and without Frankie being by her side, and how she realizes she doesn't want to be alone and she appreciates Frankie. It is one of the most accurate depictions of what it feels like to be a patient in the American healthcare systems that I have ever seen. Like, it was like a horror movie. It really is that terrifying, and you have that little power, and people just treat you like you don't matter, like you don't exist. It's terrifying. And obviously, it ends up being okay. Frankie ends up being able to renew her license, but the time that she is trying to take the test for her license and she can't drive, it shows the very real struggles of not being able to drive in America, and how, like, her fear of being stuck at home all the time is so very realistic. But also, it's a fun show sometimes. Sometimes they do peyote together and get really high, and that's funny. I think it's also really nice to have this age group be the main characters. Like, it's not often that older people are the center of the show. Honestly, the only one I can really think of is Golden Girls, where it's the older part of the cast that is the center of the show, that are the main characters of the show. I think it's really great to see this older storyline. It somewhat brings me some comfort. I just turned 25, and obviously that's nowhere near 70, but it has made me start thinking about how I am starting to get older now. I'm not a teenager anymore. I'm an adult now, and it's only older from here. And so it was kind of comforting to see these characters that still very much live and have a life, even though they're in their 70s. Like, life doesn't end when you get old. Life ends when it ends. I have been watching more Grace and Frankie. I think we're about halfway through season 4 right now, or just about to end season 4, entering season 5. I'm not quite sure. I have been really enjoying it a lot. I'll start with my drawbacks again. I still don't really enjoy the kids all that much, especially Brianna. The more Brianna's on screen, the less I like her. However, Coyote, the more he's on screen, the more I like him, so I guess that evens out. Frankie, I think, is suffering a little bit from flanderization. Flanderization is when a character kind of just becomes a joke of themselves and becomes very one-note. They've just simplified her character so much and exaggerated the not as good parts of her, and I think that she's currently really suffering from that. Her character is currently really suffering from that. But the things that I do enjoy about the show, I think Frankie and Saul and Grace and Robert have much, much better relationships now than they did when they were married. Grace and Robert barely liked each other when they were married, and now they can enjoy each other and have some fun together and give each other advice, and I think that's really sweet. I've been enjoying seeing their relationship develop. Frankie and Saul, they keep running into problems whenever they're alone for extended periods of time. I think the problem is that they really were best friends, and they really do fit together so well. Just not in a romantic sense, but they were together in a romantic sense for a very long time, and it can be hard to de-escalate from that when I do think they did love each other. I think they loved each other a lot, actually. So I think that's why they have a harder time keeping their hands to themselves. Something that I wasn't necessarily expecting, I said in the last video I made about Grace and Frankie that I really appreciated that it was giving this perspective that the older characters were the main characters, because that's not always the case. The only other show I can think of where the older/elderly characters are the main characters are Golden Girls, and I have yet to see that. I'm sorry, I'll see it eventually, it's on my list, I just haven't gotten there. So, for me, I have never seen a show really tackle certain issues that affect elderly people. Obviously the whole thing with the vibrator is funny, but also it did open my eyes to, wow, even things like that are more difficult when you're older. I relate to some of it because I'm not in my 70s, but I do have a lot of chronic pain. So I'm not gonna lie, I would spring for that vibrator if it existed. And things like with Grace's knee and her knee surgery and Frankie's back. But also, I've considered things like Alzheimer's from the perspective of my older relatives might get it or I might get it, but I have never considered it from the perspective of watching my longtime friend get it. The storyline with Arlene, they don't say if it's Alzheimer's or dementia, but either way, I think that I'm gonna have to spend the rest of the show watching through Grace's eyes Arlene get worse and worse, and I've never considered Alzheimer's from the perspective of watching my friend develop it, watching my same-aged friend lose themselves, their memory, and I've never considered that, and watching that part of the show has been really eye-opening and sad and a little bit difficult. I've considered things like being put in a home and stuff like that when I'm old. I think a lot of us think about stuff like that, but it really has also opened my eyes to how disrespectfully old people are treated when they are seen as no longer a productive member of society or kind of a burden. How we kind of just shove them into a home with all these rules like they're kindergartners and don't give them any, like, they lose all the freedom that they gained as an adult. That has to be really hard. Like, it's hard being a child, but, like, eventually you grow up and you get all the freedom that you didn't have, and you get to do all the things that you didn't get to do as a kid, and you get to learn for yourself why you should or shouldn't do some of them. But with this, it's just everybody infantilizing them. Or is there a word for that when it's old people? Maybe, I don't know. But everybody treating them like they're dumb and feeble and like they need all this protection, and they've lost the freedom that they had as younger adults. They are now back in a position of childhood, of having to follow everybody else's rules and do what everybody else says, and that must be so frustrating. If I am ever old and in a position where I'm being bossed around by, I am gonna be so fucking mad. Like, what do you mean I don't get to eat when I want anymore, sleep when I want anymore? I have to go on some schedule like I'm at a weird boarding school. But also, I do see it from the kid's perspective as well, because my dad is in his 70s, and I think about stuff like this for him. Like, what if he falls? What if he gets sick and I'm not there to take care of him? Like, what if something happens to him and there's no one around to help him? I live several hours away from him now. It would make me feel more comfortable if someone was checking in on him every now and again. My dad is very active. He's in very good shape for his 70s. He does not look like he's in his 70s. He looks maybe like he's in his mid-60s, which is pretty good for being in your mid-70s. But, so, yeah, it's a good show. There are parts of it that are weak, but the good parts really make it worth it and outweigh the weak parts. I finally finished watching Grace and Frankie, and as always, I will start with the bad parts. Brianna, I never warmed up to her. She never got any better. I think that she deserved it when Barry broke up with her. Or did she break up with Barry? I don't know. I don't really care. I didn't care for, like, really any of her storylines. And I did not care for her. Bud, his whole stand-up comedy storyline might have worked better if he had been at all funny the entire show, but he was always like the straight man to everybody else's crazy. So I think literally I get it because he's not funny, and that's the joke, is that he's not funny, but I just didn't really enjoy that storyline. Now, on the upside, Frankie's writing, like literally as soon as I made the last video, Frankie's writing got a lot better. I understand now what they were going for. I just didn't wait for them to cook long enough. They were going for a storyline where Grace kind of gets in Frankie's way of doing things the Frankie way, and so Frankie never gets to have her complete plan realized, and it always just makes her look crazy. And after that, the dynamic between their relationship got a lot better and a lot more even, and Frankie's writing in general got a lot better. By the end of the show, Robert was my favorite character, which makes his memory loss so much worse. The moment where Brianna and Mallory were at the door and he asked them if they wanted pizza, and they both said, no, we have other stuff to do, blah, blah, blah. And then they go out to talk to Saul, and they're like, no, Dad's just always had a bad memory. He's just filing things in the unimportant file. And Saul's like, yeah, I thought that too, but this is different. And then he comes out and asks if they want pizza again. That was devastating. I cried really hard. Low-key, the whole last season was leading up to someone is going to die, and obviously Frankie thought she was going to be the one to die, and we learn in the heaven sequence that she is supposed to be the one that dies, but she gets to go back anyways because Dolly Parton is just so taken by Grace and Frankie's love for each other, which is really sweet. I kind of thought that Grace was going to be the one that died, and, like, we were doing all this build-up to Frankie dying, and then it was going to be Grace dying, and it was going to be, like, really sudden and horrible. So what they did was a lot less painful. What else? I was really rooting for Nick and Grace to work out together, but by the end, Nick had kind of lost me, so I guess it's okay where they ended. Yeah, overall, very good show, very great writing, great acting. Jane Fonda and Martin Sheen especially really brought some amazing acting skills. Lily Tomlin was great too, but she was also kind of just Lily Tomlin. Not that that's a bad thing. I really like Lily Tomlin, and I like the things she's in. So I didn't mind that at all. I also will say both Martin Sheen and Lily Tomlin were in West Wing, and I was a little worried going into Grace and Frankie that all I would be able to see is, especially with Martin Sheen, that all I would be able to see is President Bartlett. But I can't at all. Like, I do not see the same character at all, which he's an actor. That's what actors are supposed to do. But I was just a little worried because Martin Sheen just has such a recognizable face and such a recognizable voice. And there certainly were similarities between Robert and President Bartlett. But overall, Martin Sheen just did such a great job differentiating them that I did not have any trouble telling myself that this was Robert Hansen and not President Bartlett. Anyway, yeah, great show. I would give it like a 4 out of 5. I highly recommend. It's a good show. Some little bits and pieces that I didn't get to say about Grace and Frankie while I was doing my little reviews. Allison's character, I have really grown to enjoy, especially by the end. I thought she was really funny. She also was one of the best dressers on the show. Like, it wasn't amazing, but compared to everybody else, she was doing pretty good. Mallory, by the end, also had some pretty good outfit. I do wish that Mallory had had a more realized storyline. Like, I felt like they were going somewhere with her, but they just didn't quite get there. Also, they... Oh, no, wait. They did wrap up the Coyote potentially going on another bender thing again. He ordered the rum and coke. Grace is the one who drank it instead of Coyote. And Coyote went to an AA meeting right after because he freaked himself out. Okay, so never mind.